In the summer of 1582, the most powerful man in Japan was killed in a burning temple. His closest ally heard the news 2 days of hard riding away, with 30 men and no army. He was not expected to live through the week. Tonight I'll tell you a story from Japan. It begins with a road that no one would take, and a quiet man who walked up it first. It was early summer, the second day of the 6th month in the year we now call 1582. Tokugawa Ieyasu was in Sakai, a port city near Osaka. He was not there for war. He had come to see the city. Temples, markets, the harbor. He had brought 30 men with him, maybe a few more. No army. Hattori Hanzo was one of the men who walked beside him. It was a quiet morning. Nothing about it felt like the beginning of anything. Then a rider came. He had ridden through the night. His horse was finished. He could barely stand when he reached them. He did not bow properly. He did not wait to be spoken to. He said the words the way a man says something he does not want to be true. Kyoto was burning. The Honnoji Temple was gone. Oda Nobunaga was dead. Killed by his own general. Killed the night before while everyone slept. Nobunaga was the most powerful man in Japan. Ieyasu was his ally. Not his equal, his ally. Everything Ieyasu had, his land, his name, his safety, stood on that one friendship. And that friendship had died in a burning temple 2 days of hard riding away. He was in a city that was not his, surrounded by roads that were not his, with 30 men. By evening, every man in the country would know. Ieyasu did not shout. He did not give orders. He said he would go to Kyoto, to a temple there, and end his life, the way a man does when there is nothing left to hold. He said it calmly. That was the part that frightened them. He was not being dramatic. He had already decided. The men around him went very still. It was Honda Tadakatsu who spoke first, then the others. They told him what men always tell a lord in that moment, that it was not over, that he had land waiting, that he could still get home. Hanzo said very little. He was not a man who spoke to persuade. He waited. And when Ieyasu finally looked up and asked how, Hanzo was the one who answered. Home was Mikawa. East, 200 kilometers over mountains. The main road ran through Kyoto, and Kyoto belonged to the man who had killed Nobunaga. That road was death. The sea route meant finding a ship, and ships took days to find. Every hour they stood still, the news spread further. There was one way left, a line of mountains between them and the sea on the other side. Iga. Iga was a small province of steep hills and hidden valleys. The people there had no lord. They governed themselves village by village for generations. The year before, Nobunaga had sent an army into those valleys and burned them. Not a battle, a clearing. Villages, temples, families. The ones who lived went into the hills and stayed there. They had every reason to kill anyone who had ever stood beside Oda Nobunaga. Hanzo's father had come from Iga. Hanzo himself was born in Mikawa. He had never lived in those valleys. He served the Tokugawa, and he had done it well enough that men called him a warrior, not a man of Iga. But the name was still his, Hattori. In those hills, that name meant something. He was about to find out how much. They left Sakai without announcing it. No banners, no armor that shone. 30-odd men on a road dressed like nothing in particular. Ieyasu rode in the middle of them. He did not speak much. Hanzo went ahead and came back, all morning, checking the road the way you check a floor you are not sure will hold. By afternoon, they were in the hills. There is a thing that happens after a great man dies. The roads fill with farmers carrying spears, not soldiers, farmers. They come out for the men running away, the beaten ones, the lost ones, the ones with good armor and no one left behind them. They take the armor. They take the swords. They take whatever is in the sleeves. They do not ask who you are first. On the second ridge, Hanzo stopped walking. Above them, along the top of the slope, men were standing. 10. Then more than 10. They were not hiding. That was the worst part. They had no reason to hide. They watched the little group on the road below the way you watch something that has already been decided. Behind Hanzo, 30 men put their hands on their swords. Hanzo told them not to draw. Then he walked up the slope alone. No armor, hands open and away from his body. 30 men watched him climb toward a line of strangers with spears, and none of them could do anything but watch. He was a small figure by the time he reached the top. They let him get close. Then they closed around him. He gave them his name. Not his rank. Not the name of the Lord he served. His family name and the valley his father had come from, and the names of the men in that valley his father had known. He said them slowly, the way you set something down that might break. One of the men with the spears lowered it. Not far, enough. What happened next was not a duel. It was a conversation between men on a hillside, and most of it was about money. Silver from the bags they had carried out of Sakai, and something harder to weigh. A promise, from a lord they had never met, that Iga would not be forgotten again. Hanzo could not guarantee it. He said it anyway. The road opened, one ridge of it. That is how the rest of it went. Ridge by ridge, village by village. Hanzo walking ahead into places where he did not know if the answer would be a bow or a spear, and coming back down to say the one word they were waiting for. Move. Some of the men from those hills came with them after that, not as friends, as something closer to a fee that had been paid. The group grew. So did the number of people who knew where they were. They did not light fires that night. They sat in a stand of cedar with the horses close and listened. Cicadas. Water somewhere below. Nothing else. Ieyasu sat against a tree with his eyes open. Someone offered him rice. He held it and did not eat it. Hanzo did not sit down at all. The next day the mountains got steeper, and the villages got harder. In one of them, no one came out to meet Hanzo. The doors stayed shut. The path through was narrow, with a slope on one side and a drop on the other, and the whole group had to walk it in a line, one man behind another. Nothing to stand behind, nowhere to go but forward. Halfway through, an arrow came down into the path in front of Ieyasu's horse. No one moved. The arrow was still standing in the dirt. Above them, on the slope, there were more men than they could count, and every one of them had the high ground. If it started, it would be over in the time it takes to cross a room. Ieyasu did not reach for his sword. He sat very straight on the horse and looked at nothing in particular. Hanzo walked forward and stood in the open where they could see him. He said his name again. He said his father's name again. He said it loudly, in a voice that was not asking for anything. For a long moment there was nothing. Then, somewhere up on the slope, an old man's voice said the name back to him. Just the name, nothing after it. And the men on the hill began to lower their bows. They crossed the highest point of it near a place called Kabuto. From up there you could see the whole country in both directions, the way they had come and the way they still had to go. It was very quiet. Men who have been holding their breath for 2 days do not celebrate. They just keep walking. On the far side, the air changed. There was salt in it. They came down into Ise, and the mountains let them go. At a beach called Shiroko, they found a boat, and a man willing to take money to sail it. Then they waited. That was the last hard part. Standing on sand in the open, in daylight, with nothing to hide behind, waiting for the wind. Ieyasu stood at the edge of the water and looked east across the bay. They landed in Mikawa on the 4th day. His own province, his own name on the land. He stepped off the boat and stood on it for a moment, and the men behind him waited, and no one said anything at all. Hanzo stayed where he was, a little behind him, the way he always did. As far as anyone wrote down, Ieyasu did not thank him that day, and Hanzo did not seem to expect it. Ieyasu became the ruler of all Japan 21 years later. His family held that power for 2.5 centuries. He never forgot those 4 days. The men from Iga who came down out of the hills with him were given places in his service, and a gate of his castle in Edo was put in their care. People began calling it Hanzo's Gate. Tokyo still has it. There is a subway line named after it now. Most of the people who pass through it every morning are not thinking about a mountain road. I keep thinking about the moment they landed and no one said anything. 4 days and not one word of thanks. I don't know if that was coldness or if it was something they both understood and did not need to say out loud. I've never been sure. I wonder what you think. What about you? Good night.